Welcome back to another episode of Kano Cups, or another episode here on channel KOK. However you want to say it, you are back here, and we are back. I am back. Joshua the Branch is back, and so is God is a Playwright. This is episode 2 in this series where we talk about how God is the ultimate storyteller and how these archetypes help us and how we can be co-authors, have co-authority, so on and so forth. And the subtitle for this discussion, is contracts. So, welcome to Branch.
Hello. It's nice to be here. And no, we're not talking about the contacts in your phone. We're talking about contracts.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And we have some of the highlights for this episode could be, we might not get through all of them, are things like Jesus Christ Superstar, propaganda, stars being sold out, shimmy ya, shimmy yay, and many more. So, to start this off,
You mean to greenlight it?
to greenlight it, let's maybe we could even touch on greenlighting a little bit. So if we're using these analogies about God as a playwright, what would greenlighting be? That would just be your birth, right?
Or Genesis.
Or Genesis.
In the beginning, God
Yeah.
created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and void and without form, I think is how it says. In Hebrew, that would be tovu vabohu, which means basically formless.
Yeah, that is a good point.
That's kind of like, okay, so you got what is a script before it's a script? Well, it's separately. It's maybe ink and paper. But then there's somebody that forges that all together in a story and a script. And then it's something more than just paper and ink. It becomes a story, right?
Yeah, so it's this ephemeral thing in the imaginal realm that you have to, kind of, I guess, boil it in your mind cauldron and, then bring that into the physical or manifest it, craft it, create it by, putting pen on paper to actually do the hard work, And also, I guess we could dovetail this idea with what happens when something gets canned, even when the story, is already has already been done, so to speak. For example, in the film industry, especially here lately, there's been a trend of films, completed films, like they're already made, the money has already been spent, the actors have already acted, the editors have already edited, the director has already directed. It's a completed product. and certain studios, for one reason or the other, will just shelve it, will not release it, and then they'll get tax write-offs. They'll get like $30 million here, or so on and so forth. Or they might just put it up on the streaming platform for like a month and then pull it down and say, "Oh, it didn't do well. Where's our tax money?"
So this is actually an insurance claim when they do that, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there's these are people's jobs. They're yeah, they got their paycheck, but maybe this was just going to be their breakout role.
Can you mention what is it? Was it Spider Girl? It didn't like emotionally affect that actress.
Oh, that was Batgirl.
Oh, Batgirl. Excuse me.
Yeah, the one of the movies that was shelved. It was a Batgirl movie made by Warner Brothers. Also,
They do the Acme
last
movie
year,
too, right?
what?
This is like a Warner Brothers issue, right? Because didn't they do the same thing with the Acme
Yeah,
Coyote Roadrunner?
the Acme Wile E. Coyote movie, which is funny because that whole movie was going to be about Wile E. Coyote going to court with Acme for giving him bad projects over the years.
If only we could sue the film industries for all the junk, right?
Yeah. And so it's just wild. Warner Brothers is getting the heat of it, but also that's because, or not because, that it's also possibly tied to, people are speculating it being tied to the merger that happened in 2022 of Discovery, like the Discovery Channel and all that.
Oh yeah,
merging with Time Warner Brothers.
Now, didn't they tried to get even bigger than that? I think didn't they try to buy AT&T as well or something like that? And
yeah, there was a lot of
stepped in.
mergers of different
or
companies.
Comcast. Yeah, like all the media companies were trying to become one big conglomerate, and I think the government stepped in on that.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's not just Warner Brothers. Disney did it with Willow. They made a sequel series of sorts to the 80s fantasy classic Willow, and they went to go put it on Disney Plus. Well, then shortly after premiering it, they took it down and said, "Well, it just didn't do well, so let's just collect tax money for it." So these aren't just projects falling through during production. These are full, crafted ideas that are not getting put out. And that goes into this whole like physical media. Like this is going to happen more and more with streaming services. Things are going to get pulled down, taken down. And yeah, he goes, well, these are just movies. It doesn't matter. It's just, it's just entertainment, whatnot. Or maybe these aren't even good movies now. Or the old ones are the good ones, and I own those on VHS or whatever. These are still stories that are being told. That and it's just going to start with movies, with media, but then everything else is going to start being taken away. And in the digital age, things are so much more ephemeral and everything. The reason why I bring that up, though, is raising the question and this analogy that we are crafting in a way of God being a playwright. What would that be like if God decided to shelve a finished product?
And to me, that almost seems like maybe what a prophecy would be, right? So a prophecy is something that's written, it's cast, meaning he's got the people in mind, everything's, maybe even the production's taken place or something. So, but yet it's not the right time. So maybe maybe the only difference here is that there's no insurance claim. So, I guess if, and if a studio was making these decisions like, what, the cultural zeitgeist just isn't right. We've pulled the public, and it just doesn't seem like, maybe in another season or two it'll be right, and we'll release it. But no, these are just like, oh, we're writing it off, And so I think that this is kind of the result of people that don't really care about cinema being in control of cinema. And whereas if God is in control of his play, he at least cares about his play, right? So even if he were to shelve something, I think it's for his own purpose. Like, oh, this is my director's cut. Like the Book of Revelations is actually his director's cut, right?
Yeah.
It's like, here's the movie I've been waiting to release.
Exactly. That a good example of that possibly could be all the stories of people having dreams, prophetic dreams about the Titanic before going on the Titanic. Then they ended up, backing out of going on that trip because they were having so vivid dreams of
I did
a
not know that. That's
catastrophe
pretty
happening.
wild.
Yeah. And there was even that book someone wrote like years prior to the Titanic about, I forget the title of the book, but it's a book about a very powerful ship that wasn't supposed to sink called the Titan that ended up sinking. Flash forward years, later, and
what was the famous quote that they said about the Titanic?
it was unsinkable.
No, they said that God himself couldn't sink it. Right?
Oh yeah,
I think they
true.
tempted God by saying that. He's like,
Yeah.
so that would be like an edit. It's like, oh yeah? Well, how about I do a revision on this script? How do you like that? I'm just gonna sink it. There'll be no season 3. I'm shelving it.
Yeah.
Oh, and can you mention so like when we say that something, when you've been canned, like at work, if you get canned, that means you've been fired, right? So in this way, it kind of got that connotation where a film, if it's canned, they say, well, it's in the can. Well, that can mean that it's finished, but that doesn't mean it's ever going to see the light of day.
Yeah.
So yeah, to be canned is not necessarily a good thing. You might have that feeling of accomplishment having completed something, but in the world of actors and actresses, they, really don't get paid a lot of times until after the fact because, all the money's been used up in the production, right? So,
yeah, they get it's called residuals. Is what it's called, residual pay, when actors get like paid, years after for all the like
like royalties.
merchandise and DVDs being bought. That's the thing. That's not as much of a thing anymore when things are just going straight to streaming, right? You're not like getting income for people keep on buying your DVDs.
And tickets.
Yep. And since we're on the topic of the Titanic, this could be a good transition into furthering this topic. I recently saw a video of Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm not a fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm not endorsing big science or anything like that. He was talking about how the stars, the sky map, the sky clock in the movie The Titanic was not accurate to what the sky would have looked like back when the Titanic was actually setting sail. And it wasn't till a re-release of the movie that he was talking to James Cameron about it. And he paralleled it in the speech with before Seth MacFarlane of Family Guy fame and American Dad fame made his movie Ted, that stoner buddy comedy about little boy's bear coming to life, but then years later they're both stoners and partiers and stuff. In that movie, at the beginning, the boy makes a wish upon a star
Oh, really? I did not know
for
that.
his bear to be alive so he could have a best friend. And before they shot that scene, Seth MacFarlane called up Neil deGrasse Tyson because Seth MacFarlane also produced the re-modern version of Cosmos.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, because he was a fan of the original Cosmos when he was a kid, and so he produced the modern version that he did a few years ago. So he had his contact in that was Neil deGrasse Tyson. So when he was making Ted, and he was needed that star for him to wish upon to make Ted come alive, he called up Neil deGrasse Tyson and asked, "Hey, on this exact day in 1980, whatever, what would the sky look like?" So Neil deGrasse Tyson, looked it up, did his little science, astronomy stuff, figured out what the exact sky would have looked like that night. So in the speech, Neil deGrasse Tyson was making the point that the movie Ted had the correct sky versus Titanic, which is a actual historical thing that happened. The movie did not have the correct sky.
Well, that would fall into the realm of on a set. Isn't there somebody called a dramaturg? And their job
Yes.
is to, like, if I take a sip of water on every take and the water level keeps going down, it's their job to make sure that water level is where it should be, or the clock maybe passes time, and they got to make sure all the little details like lineups. So maybe this is an example of where maybe they didn't hire a dramaturg, or maybe he just missed it, he or she missed it, and the night sky thing just kind of went over their head. Well, quite literally.
Yeah. And maybe since we're on the topic, maybe that's like when little things seem to go missing, like you lost your keys or something, but you put your keys down right in the key bowl, but for some reason the key bowl's empty or something. Maybe that's just God's dramaturg that just made a mistake or something. Who
Oh, well,
knows?
you mentioned what was it, brownies
Yeah,
before? Or
brownies, house
house
spirits.
spirits moving stuff
Yep,
around. Yeah, maybe they're helping with the editing, or they're
yep.
the wearing the black suits, like moving the stage stuff around.
Yeah, like the black
Stage hands.
turtlenecks.
Yeah. Maybe maybe Hat Man is just the dramaturg for reality.
That's funny.
Just
Yes.
here checking on the details of things. Carry on. Nothing to see here.
Yes, I've I've had my meetings, I guess you could say, my um instances of dealing with brownies at other people's houses and stuff. Yeah, that's that's a really fun point. I'll bring this up about the stars though, to kind of transition us in talking about the stars that have fallen and been stuck in our TV screen.
Do you mean the silver screen?
The silver screen, exactly. So here's a good time to get into starlets, silver screen starlets.
Now, this sounds like a serious topic.
Yeah. So these stars, to become a star, right? It makes me think of there's an episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog for all my 90s and 2000s kids who grew up watching Courage the Cowardly Dog. There was an episode, I believe it was called like, it possibly could have been called The Shadow or something. Courage is having a shadow kind of be a trickster around the house and make Muriel and Eustace, the two elderly couple that take care of Courage, kind of get frustrated and think things are happening when they're not by pretending to be their shadows. And Courage is trying to prevent all these misunderstandings. Well, the shadow turns out to be the shadow of someone who had passed away. And to resolve the issue, Courage finds out that that person always wanted to be a star. But now, he's passed away, he can't. So Courage looks up at the night sky and says something along the lines of, well, if you can't be a music star or a movie star, maybe you can be a literal star and inspire people. And so this shadow spirit shoots up into the night sky and becomes a new star. And that's how the episode ends.
Now, which star would it be? I wonder. Was it intentional that it was, was that just a subtle thing and it's really a certain star?
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to go back to see if they got the sky clock right for
Right,
whatever
we'll have to
that
call it
is.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah. But saying that, how we're talking about contracts. How does a person reach stardom? By signing a contract, right?
But what
So
does that really entail?
yeah, that was actually my question for you, Joshua. What's your ideas on how that would go down? I know you possibly have your own experience with what could be
The entity behind the contracts?
the entity that's trying to get them to sign the contract.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an encounter with an entity, I think a few years back at this point, and it's how I learned the definition of bullseye. I'd fallen asleep on my couch, woke up to in the dream, it was a floating head with one red eye and flame at the top of the nose between the two eye sockets, but only one of the eyes had an eye, and it was bright red and had like a lens flare, so intensely bright. But it was just the head itself floating in blackness. And that was the entire dream. It was just him staring at me for who knows how long. I don't know how long it was. And so I woke up from that dream thinking, oh that was a little strange. And I said, well, at least it wasn't 3 a.m., because I checked the time and it was 1:30, which now I understand is 13, death. And when I was seeing the character, even though he never spoke to me, I felt like I could read his name on his forehead, and it was death. And so at 1:30 was when I woke up. So again, I didn't notice this pattern of 13 until after even months. I'm still like unpacking the symbolism of some of these encounters and experiences months and years later. But in the aftermath of it, 13 ended up being a theme. So yeah, I'd gotten up and decided I would move to my bed, and I was woken up by a loud crash downstairs, and of course, I had no idea what it was. So I bolted downstairs and was looking all around, expecting to see a huge catastrophe of some sort, like a piece of furniture falling over or something. But all I found was a painting in the floor, a rather large painting, but nevertheless. And so I just picked it up and kind of leaned it against the wall without thinking much about it. And the painting was of a matador and a bull. And it says Fiesta del Toro in Spain. In other words, party of the bulls or running of the bulls. They celebrate those sort of holidays over there in that fashion. And well, anyway, I leaned the portrait up against the wall, and I began to go back to my room, and I glance, as I'm passing the kitchen, I glance into the kitchen and see the stove clock read 3:01. And so the painting had fallen off the wall exactly 3 on the dot, which, I'd made that comment after having that dream. And so I got really nervous at that point. I thought, oh man, is whatever that was, did it, hang around for another hour and a half? So it was 1:30, hung around for another 1 hour and a half, which is another 13, to then do it on 3 on the dot. But by the time I saw the clock, it was 3:01. So another 3 and 1. So like I said, the 13 was definitely impressed upon me with that experience. But then, so I got, hair on the back of my neck was raising, and I was getting really creeped out. And I thought, well, okay, I'm just going to go back upstairs and kind of pretend like this didn't happen. And, when I got to the top of my stairs, as soon as my foot hit the top of the stairs, my computer monitor had been asleep off, and it bopped on. So, it's 3 a.m. and it's completely dark. And then as soon as I get to the top of the stairs, the computer monitor comes on right after all that other stuff happened. I thought, whoo, what's going on here, And it was a YouTube, it was what was up, just your suggested videos and stuff. And so I said out loud, I was like, well, what do you want? What are you trying to tell me? What's going on here? And the only thing I could find of interest on the YouTube suggested there was a video about the mark of the beast, which is in your right hand or your forehead, right? But of course, then years later, I discovered that there is a red eye constellation, and that's the Aldebaran is the red star in the eye of the bull, the Taurus constellation. So that's where we get bullseye from. And so I realized the painting was showing me Taurus, Aldebaran, and the Matador in that case is Orion. And I just was very intrigued by all that. And it wasn't until longer afterward I started to wonder, what was that and why did it come? I still don't understand why it came to me. But I think it might be linked to the spirit that they're dealing with, perhaps. Maybe that's who they're making their contract with, is this entity. I don't know. One other time I was given a word in a dream, Shem, which means name or fame. And in a lot of cases with these celebrities, it's got a lot to do with the fame of their name. In fact, they'll even create names, pseudonyms a lot of times. And I think that's part of the provisions in their contract is that, they own this character. And so I think that's why they create a new name, is because then when they do this contract, it's Britney Spears. That's not her real name, right? She has a different name. I'm just using her as an example. So, there'll be a lot of these different movie stars or musicians that have an actual real name, but then the one they use in their contract is a different name. So when you think about that magically and spiritually, it's almost as if, I don't know, think about like having a voodoo doll stand-in or replacement. It's like, well, any bad juju or whatever is going to get kind of attached to this persona or this fake person, this homunculus, if you will. I noticed you're wearing the homunculus shirt.
Yeah,
So
chat to one-on-one. I'm not saying it's homunculus, but it's homunculus.
It's always homunculus in the end, in the beginning and in the end, and everywhere in between. So yeah, I think that they kind of have to create this pseudo person. At least the smart ones do that anyway. I think some of the more foolish of them just sell their soul straight up, and so they end up owning the likeness of that person, their stories, their talent, their recognition, everything about them they've given away. And so how do you complete that act? You have to sign your name, right? So in the magic world, once again, that's like a sigil. So when you interact with angels or demons, you have to know their name to exercise any kind of control over them. So, would that contract have any validity if you didn't sign your name? No, it's only completed with the addition of your name. And so what is a contract then? It's all these letters forming words which are spelled, right? So you're being spell bound. You're bound by your contract. It's binding. So it's a spell binding around your name and your likeness, your avatar. So I think that there's some wisdom in how some of these people change their name or have a stage name or whatever. Like Prince
Yes.
would be another good example. He's obviously probably not named Prince. Maybe he is. but they come up with this persona so that the company doesn't own them. It owns this persona. And then they're given the advantage with the producers, throwing propaganda and marketing behind them. It's like, well, we'll make you a star.
Yeah, and that's
You'll
what
be
it
a
is.
rising star.
Yeah, that's their reasonings when you look up actors and actresses and singers' real names, their family name might come from whatever country of origin they're from, whether it's a Hispanic name or a Slavic name or whatnot, and their rudimentary, more physical reasoning for it is, oh, my family name is too hard to say. It's not going to
Resonate.
Resonate with people. It's not going to become a household name. But if I turn it to, this catchy, maybe it has alliteration or whatnot, title.
A mnemonic device.
A
Or
mnemonic
a
device,
mnemonic
exactly.
device.
Then that will resonate with people. Then it'll become an earworm, a household name.
A meme, if you will.
Yeah, a meme. Exactly. It's all meme magic. And that's all marketing, propaganda, which we'll get into in a second. But before we move on from this section, Joshua, you said something the other day when we was going over these topics. about how Jesus signed his name when his blood spilt.
Yeah, man. And I think so when he was crucified on the cross, his blood, when you'll hear, especially Southern preachers, you'll hear them talk about the blood of the Lamb was our ransom. It bought our salvation. It was our ticket, in other words, to heaven, and covers our sins. And so I thought, well, that's really interesting because, we often hear about how the devil owns the world, right? But we actually inherit the earth as well from him. Not from him, but, he basically took it from Adam and Eve, right? So it's like a restoration of sorts where the blood of the Lamb is restoring something. So imagine being like a jilted actor or an actress, getting involved in a bad contract deal. And then, all these years go by, and then finally some type of rectification takes place. And, we're kind of like where what Taylor Swift's buying back all of her songs. I mean, I don't want to trivialize the fall of man in such a way to compare it with Taylor Swift, but you see what I mean? Like, she's getting back her content, right? So, and that way, humans.
Maybe a different example of this in a different way would be not only did the woman that played Batgirl in the movie say it took a toll on her mentally afterwards, when that project was shelved, but there was also a stunt woman who got physically injured and got sent to the hospital in really bad condition after like a motorcycle got rained into her body. And after after doing that stunt for this movie and going through all that trauma and going to the hospital, she didn't have anything to show for it. Yeah, she got a paycheck, right? But she didn't have anything to show for it. And now, allegedly, she's going to be trying to take Warner Brothers to court over it.
So she's Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah.
Who always gets hurt. Arguably, he's like a stuntman, I guess. But yeah, so that's how the humans gain this restoration, as that since we're heirs to Christ's dominion, he purchases, I guess we'll just say Israel for all intents and purposes, and for his people in the future. And so that's how we're able to inherit this, is because we're under his house, under his name, under his Shem. We all share that. So I think that that's kind of like a spiritual understanding and aspect to, well, why are things like this done the way they're done? And I think it's because the fundamental fabric of our reality is made up of the matrix, or which I know is kind of a trigger maybe for people. So allow me to explain by saying that in Hebrew, there are 3 letters that are considered the progenitors of all other words in the language. And that is Aleph, which is the bull. It's A. It's literally a bull's head, which you'll find the bull's eye on. Aleph, Shin, and Mem. Mem is referring to water or memory. Shin is the spirit or teeth. And Aleph is bull, ox, leader, those sorts of things. And of course, you eat the bull with teeth, which is Shin. So I find that very intriguing, right? So these 3 letters all create the other words. So, imagine your contract in all Hebrew. Then the mothers of each word in there would be those three same mothers. And Christ is associated with the Shin in a lot of ways. For instance, his name was Yeshua or Yahshua, which has the sh in it. That's the Shin itself. So personally, I always found that very interesting. But yeah, so this act of sacrifice is, a role that had been written, and he had executed this role perfectly. And so God's playwright was the story that involves his plan of salvation is basically a script, right? That he's allowing to be acted out. And so in various times throughout history, prophets, fathers of the nation of Israel, etc., Noah, even before that, Adam and Eve, they've all played their part, right? In what's called Hashem, as the Jews would refer to it as Hashem, meaning the name or the fame. So if you want to share in the fame and the name of this house, you have to follow certain rules, until Christ came, and then that's the right-hand path that we were able to enjoy until present day, until that ends anyway. And then the judgment occurs of the left hand. So that too is a role. So we always hear about the Antichrist. So that is a role that has been written, but shelved, right? Or think of it this way. There's been many antichrists, right? Even in the Gospels, it talks about how the Antichrist spirit was even alive and well then. Now, when we hear about the Antichrist, it's the Antichrist that we're thinking of, the final, the greatest. But there have been many others. So think about like the James Bond movies, or a better example, Doctor Who. How many Doctor Whos were there? How many James Bonds were there? Well, think about that too. How many Antichrists have there been? But then there'll always be the final one, right?
Another example, and this is a bit different because this is in a way because this is a Messiah archetype. But to go on with your multiple Antichrist thing, like look at, for example, something that I talk about a lot because I got a lot out of it, which is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Look at the Avatar cycle. Like there's always another Avatar afterwards. There's always another reincarnation to do the story of whatever that needs to be taken care of during that time period. For example, Aang was the Avatar for during the 100-Year War, and he was a pacifist. He was a monk. He was just a wide-eyed kid. Versus Katara, not Katara, Korra, the next Avatar after him in the Legend of Korra. She was a prodigy. She knew how to do the majority of the elements from bending them from a very young age. And she was gung-ho. She wanted to be the Avatar. She wanted to fight, right? But she didn't have the spiritual side. She didn't have the patience. And she was the Avatar during the industrial age of the Avatar world, where the things became more steampunk-like and became a bit more modern. The bending became a bit more like MMA fighting and not like traditional martial arts. Became more materialistic, and so they needed that spiritual side of things. So every Avatar in the Avatar cycle is always born to be the character, the Messiah, that whatever that story of that time period needs.
The role.
Yeah.
Yeah, so think of when God casts for a role. There are many examples in the Bible where, he already had the script written, and then he finds somebody that's perfect for the role. And what's he do? He changes their name. Instead of, so he doesn't write the script to fit the person fits the role. And so I think that's really interesting too, because almost every single saint that I can think of had an original name, but then is given a new name. And this is also a trope you kind of see in hero movies a lot of time too. Like, it doesn't happen all the time, but a lot of times there's some type of name change or secret name or something like that kind of goes along with it. And it's, I think it kind of jives with the crown chakra. I think you even mentioned the crown earlier. But yeah, so, if you read in Revelation, it talks about how, in this judgment and coronation ceremony, that Christ gives each of the victors after the tribulation, they're each given a crown and a white stone with a new name. So even then, we're all going to be fulfilling a pre-written script with roles and names, a name that only we're going to know, it says.
Which there's also improv. Think about, we have, like, if you listen to a lot of behind the scenes of movies, you might hear commentary of, that one thing that was said that, is now iconic was just an improv during one random take, but everyone really liked it. So they went with that take, right? So it wasn't necessarily in the original script, but they put it in anyway because it was a flow state type of moment that they couldn't not use it, right? And another thing that could go along with this, and we're talking about names, is, I'm sure we all remember, I think it was 2021, 2022, when there was all that going on in court with Johnny Depp and his ex Amber Heard.
Mm-hmm.
And now she changed her name and left the country with, is it their daughter? And she quit Hollywood after all that. So she changed her name to leave Hollywood, to get out of the limelight, because Amber Heard is attached to Hollywood, right?
Hey, hold on. You said something there. Limelight. We just learned what that meant. Do you remember?
I guess I'm not.
I sent you an Instagram post, and it was talking about how they used to create light with calcium carbonate, which is lime, I guess.
Carbonate. Yeah.
So they would put it in a like a metal lantern and then put water in it, and the reaction between water and the calcium carbonate would form a little flame, coming out of a hole. The gas would be coming out, and they would light that to produce a flame there. And then so that became the limelight. And so there was a time in cinema where, the light was, for these productions, that's how it was produced, was literally limelight. So even though, of course, we don't use limelight today, it's still something that we say, right? So I just wanted to interrupt because we say it, and I don't think sometimes we say silver screen too. That's another one.
Yeah, silver is interesting since it's attached to, like we said earlier, Sirius. So we have the silver starlets, the Sirius stars, the silver screen.
And what is a starlet? A rising star.
Yeah.
So in the first week of July, you have the heliacal rising of Sirius, and it heralds the flooding of the Nile, and that it's also the peak of summertime. So I think that, in a way, I can't really connect Aldebaran and the bull to Sirius, the Silver Star, but I think that, somehow or another,
Yeah, I
those
mean,
things might be related.
when we are shooting a movie, we're shooting the stars.
Right?
So it's a shooting star. And
That's
a shooting
yes.
star isn't necessarily a star, it's a comet.
Mm-hmm. May I comment on that
Yes.
comet topic? So we have Halley's Comet in our neighborhood, solar system's neighborhood. It's not necessarily visible right now from Earth, but the tail of the comet is causing falling stars, shooting stars in Orion. And so sometime during, I think it was late October or mid-October, you could view the night sky in Orion and see these shooting stars, which happen to be debris from the tail of the comet. And the word comet, shout out to Mario at Symbolic Studies, he was talking about the constellation Comet and how it's actually hair. And the constellation of Comet just is like a wig, basically, just a head of hair without the head.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I just thought of this. When you're wishing upon a star, a lot of times you're saying, like, you're wishing something, but if you're really desperate, you may say, I will do this in return. Like, I'll, I'll give up this vice if I, get my wish.
That sounds suspiciously like a contract, Chris.
Sounds like a contract or a commitment to have some wordplay.
Yeah, man. And so that also reminds me of some of these tropey type movies where somebody discovers a genie or a djinn or something like that. And it's like, be careful what you wish for, because you might get it, and you might end up binding yourself to some type of agreement. So I've even tried to stop myself. Anytime I say I wish, I'm good about stopping myself and just not finishing it, except when I'm wanting to say I wish I had a cat. That's the only time I'll finish it and say, yeah, actually, I do wish that I had a cat. So I'll let myself say that one. But I'm not offering up my firstborn for the cat, though. Speaking of which, I think that's something that kind of happens a lot in these circles, too, with these Hollywood celebrities, is maybe it's not in their contract that they're signing in for a movie, but I think the Eyes Wide Shut type contracts that they're signing behind closed doors is like, hey, you want to be part of this club, we get your firstborn child, so on and so forth. So when you look at, I know we're kind of getting into the Disney stuff here, but like the Illuminati kids and the Disney Club, a lot of those I think are products of some of these contractual agreements that they're making with entities or humans who are perhaps possessed by these entities, or doing their dirty work, so to speak.
Yeah, which earlier you talked about how Jesus, when he bled on the cross, he inherited the earth. That his blood's dripping on the earth, so to speak, was his contract to inherit the earth. And in these Devil Went Down to Georgia style sold out celebrities, a lot of times, it's we hear with all these Illuminati stories and stuff. It's all about the blood,
Mm-hmm.
and So if that is how these contracts are signed with the blood, that also parallels with royalty. Who's our modern day royalty? Really,
Celebrities.
it's just celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
So is it with these contracts with bloodlines? So maybe the contracts that these people are signing are just renewals. There's a lot of people in today's time that talk about like breaking ancestral bonds and things, which has its time and place, as well as strengthening your familial roots. There is also on the, maybe I guess you can say on the flip side, or on the darker side, maybe it's just a renewal. Maybe these people, they've been part of these bloodlines, and they need to do the next stage, need to continuously sign a new contract each generation, right? To
I see. Keep the spirit alive. That's
keep the spirit alive, to keep feeding it in a way,
well.
to
That would
keep the
explain,
star alit, to keep the flame of fame alive, the flame of fame.
right? And in the
Yeah,
Bible, it talks about how sin goes through generations in a family. So maybe those are kind of like the negative aspects of a contract. It follows you until it's broken. And so when Christ was sacrificed on the cross, he broke all contracts. So imagine Jesus Christ Superstar is able to release them all from their contracts. So and then this is just a theory of mine, but in Revelations, it talks about the stars falling from the sky. And so my kind of theory with this is that when Jesus Christ Superstar arrives, his stardom and fame eclipses all others. Who could hope to be more famous than Christ, right? None of them can. Even Trump admitted it, that he wasn't the most famous person in the world, that it was actually Christ, right? So, but then on the contrast, you got somebody like Nicki Minaj, I think it was, saying she released her memoir and it was going to outsell the Bible. So just to show like the two differing attitudes there.
yeah. That will get us into these examples, these real life examples of people that have been sold out, which is going to be a very fun topic. I think right now would be a good time for our mid-episode break, or commercial break without the commercials, so to speak. So we'll be back in a few moments, and in the meantime, get up, stretch, maybe get some more snacks, go to the bathroom, whatever you guys want, whatever you guys do during your commercial breaks as a kid. What did you go run to the pantry? Well, go run to the pantry now. This is the perfect time. So thanks, Joshua. We'll be back in a moment, and with some really awesome stuff I'm really excited about. So be right back. Welcome back, everyone. We are back for the second half of King Cup's God Is A Playwright Contracts with Joshua the Branch.
It's good to be back.
Hope everyone got a good stretch and got some tasty snacks. And yeah, let's dive into this. So, was there anything else about where we left off, Joshua, about Jesus that you wanted to say before we start running down this list of examples of people that possibly could sign contracts?
Yeah, and it's a very profound point that I'd like to make. So, first of all, his name, when we say Jesus, we're actually saying a Greek version of the name, and the meaning of it is kind of lost there. Whereas in Hebrew, the Yeshua, literally means salvation. So I think that name more perfectly captures the meaning, message, and mission of Christ. While he was here on this earth, he was to provide salvation. So when the act of buying the earth, buying an inheritance, purchasing the souls out of spiritual captivity or spiritual bondage, I think this is when we see movie stars come to God, right? Or come to Christ. It's usually like we kind of see them as like switching sides in a sense too, you know, because it's like they realize, oh, I can break my contract. All I got to do is, you know, get good with Christ here, you know, covered under the blood of the Lamb. Now my contract's null and void. And see, that's probably a secret that they really don't want them to know, because there's no other thing that can free you from that contract, right? And in Zechariah chapter 10, we see salvation, Yeshua, acting as a defense attorney in a court of law against Satan. So I think that's very interesting imagery there, to cast Christ in this role of a defense attorney of sorts, spiritual defense attorney. And so there's some, I think it's tied to the right hand versus left hand aspect. The law or contracts seem to fall under the left hand, whereas the right hand is the exception to the rule. So that's one way to look at it. Now, well, the one other thing I wanted to mention was the blood-soaked earth. Adam in Hebrew refers to red man, a man of red clay, so to speak. So we hear in some other, I can't remember the exact chapter and verse, but when we hear about Christ being slain at the foundation, the lamb that was slain at the foundation of the world, it's referring to Christ. So though he came as a human and was slain for our sins, there seems to be this understanding, at least to the prophets then, that he had died also as the Lamb of God at the foundation of the earth. And so imagine nothing but water. Again, we're going back to Genesis. The earth was formless and without, it was void and formless, without shape. And then the first earth appears. That becomes the first altar. And the Lamb was slain upon that first mound of earth, that first altar. And so that blood-soaked earth is, it was from that Adam was created. So it wasn't simply red earth. It's blood-soaked earth. So when I was talking earlier about the rectification of how, you know, the earth was actually given to Adam and Eve, but it was stolen from them. And then Christ's sacrifice rectifies that, because once again, the blood-soaked earth plays a role there, and, you know, and restoring Adam, restoring Eve's lineage, giving them back their inheritance. So I just wanted to kind of complete that weave, because that's the name that a playwright chooses for a role, I think, is very significant. And I think, didn't you mention before that an actor or an actress gets paid more if they actually had a name? And
Yes. So, regardless of what the script is, say you have, let's just say, for example, there is a character that has one or two lines, right? Now, let's say that they're credited, the character has a name. They get paid X amount of money for saying those one or two lines.
okay,
Versus, say, that same role of that same character saying one or two lines. But instead of naming the character, say, like Bob, or, Mr. Jones or something, the character is just cop number 2. Even though it's the same effort, they're doing the same thing, they're saying the same lines, the one that has a name will get paid slightly more than the one that just says, is just credited as cop number 2. That's one of the reasons why not every character will have a name. It's just save money. Of course, you don't really need to name every character in your script, right? So that's that as well. But there's also the incentive of you're saving money because you don't have to pay the actor more if you don't name the character. Also, what you was just saying reminded me of Matthew McConaughey, which, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, I don't think McConaughey is his family name.
Oh,
Could be wrong.
sounds very Irish or Scottish.
I think
possibly English.
Possibly he was on that list of actors that has a different stage name. I don't have it in front of me, so at the moment, so I can't verify that element. But nonetheless, I have seen this interview with Matthew McConaughey, and he's very careful with his words. And as he's telling the story, he has long pauses as he's telling the story. And what he's describing is that he has prayed with his fellow actors and actresses at his dinner table. He said they say grace, pray together. But this is behind safe, closed, private doors. And then when he's up giving, receiving an award for best actor or whatnot, he will thank God, as some actors do.
You mean give credit?
Some actors don't.
Credits?
Yeah, giving God credit for giving them, a chance to play that role in life, right? And he said he's noticed that the same people he sat at dinner table praying, saying grace with, when he sees them in the audience, that he's thanking God. They're clapping when he says, thank you for my wife, my manager, and all this. And then when he says he thanks God, those same people he prayed with will pause and look around and see, is everyone else clapping for that one? And if it's not in their best interest, they were like set on their hands essentially.
Well, that's typically how they all would behave, I think, because in today's cancel culture, you got to be really careful what you say and do because if, let's just say praying, for instance, next thing you know, he's losing jobs because he's, I don't know, a right wing extremist or something. I saw just the other day how even a belief in Christ now is being seen as, you know, I don't want to use the phrase, but you know what I mean. That they don't like that.
Yeah.
We could say that, but yeah. So I think it's risky for them, But this reminds me of some scripture. Christ tells his disciples, I believe, or whoever he's talking to somebody, but he says, "If you deny me on earth, I'll deny you in heaven." Meaning that when you do die and you are expecting to go to heaven, if you were too afraid to stand up for your beliefs on earth, then when you get to heaven, he's going to say, "Get out of here. I don't know you," you know? And so I think that this is kind of cool because adherents of salvation get to share in his credit, his name and fame. So we get to share. We're, like you said earlier, co-creators, co-authors in a sense.
Yes.
So I think it's a very exciting thing to take up the mantle of salvation because not only does it cover our sins, meaning like demons have a much harder time attacking you then because you're not guilty. It can absolve your guilt. It can also relieve you of these contracts, right? So they definitely don't want people talking about it because it might sound silly and simple, but like it says in the Bible, the plan of salvation is seen as foolishness, to some people that are like of the world. When in fact, the
Yeah.
truly foolish thing is to deny salvation because maybe they're ignorant about the spirit world. And see, I think a lot of these celebrities, maybe they don't really take the spirit world seriously, no pun intended. And then, so they don't really think much of these contracts or what they might be agreeing to. And then it's like, whoa, once they figure it out, they're like, oh man, I made a huge mistake. The spirit world's actually real. My soul is real. All these things are real. I just thought it was silly, fun and games. And I just wanted money and to be famous. So I
Yeah.
think it's kind of a tragedy for a lot of them.
Yeah. A Greek tragedy, as Hollywood has its roots in. And also, as you was talking, I just remember something I wanted to say earlier myself. Um, when you was talking about, us getting cast by God to play these roles,
Right.
that also reminds me of stories of kids and people who remember, you know, that have memories before they was born. And a
Oh,
lot of them will say like, I got to pick my family, I got to pick my mom, I got to pick my, you know, customize my character, choose what journeys I want to take or whatnot, choose what script I wanted to you know do in a way, and they might even have memories of the night they was conceived, even though they wasn't there, but they remember like their spirit was around, being like, it's time for me to step beyond the curtain, the veil, so to speak.
I can comment on that if you like.
Yeah.
I think it's in the book of Jeremiah. Um, I could be mistaken, however, but I think it's in this book that we find the verses says something to the effect of Yahweh is talking to his prophet, And I think the prophet's saying something to the effect of, well, I'm not important or whatever, something like that. And he's reassuring him and re-emphasizing. He's like, hey, actually, I knew you before you were formed in the womb. I knew you. So it seems to imply he was in heaven with him, or somehow, some way, God was familiar with this pure soul before it was incarnated in flesh, before it was formed in the womb. And he says, I've raised you up to be a prophet to the nations. So this person that's, the trope of the reluctant hero. You got these prophets that maybe don't want to do what God's bidding, but they just happen to have the gift of being able to interpret God's will or hear him however it might be that it's revealed. And so they're told to go out here and do these things, and that's kind of like the difference, I guess, in a named role versus an NPC extra, right? It's like,
Yeah.
if you can actually communicate with this person, then you're going to want to use them, even if they're reluctant. You're like, listen, I know you can hear me. You better do what I say.
Yeah.
And then they'll get a name change a lot of times too. So I just think that's so, I don't know, that to me has a lot of gravity to it,
Yeah.
and how we're all going to have our names changed too, and these, in this Revelation prophecy.
Yes.
And our names are added to the Lamb's Book of Life. So I kind of see that as the credits.
Oh, good point. Yes. Yeah.
It's like, hey, you starred in this Revelation season 7. You were great. Your death scene was fantastic. The way this,
you
that, and the other.
Your bow.
Take your bow. You get to be written in the credits, and then you share in that fame of the name. So yeah. But you were saying something
that Alan, Marcus, and I have talked about before. I don't know if this has ever was on screen or off screen, but we talked about how credits for movies used to have the actor's face beside them.
Oh. Yeah, there's so much space that's wasted. It seems like that could still be done.
So you could acknowledge there used to be opening and closing credits, and the opening credits is the one that had with the faces, so you knew what face was connected to each name.
That's a nice touch. It's subtle.
And one of not to bring up superheroes again, so let's settle up. Yippee!
Yippee!
One of the newer movies to do that was Avengers Endgame. Except it was at the end of the movie, since that was a lot of that was supposed to be Robert Downey Jr.'s final, role of playing Iron Man, right? Because he sacrificed himself to defeat Thanos. And so they gave the classic faces, names, almost like a memorial. Even the theater I went to up front in their lobby area had it was set out to be like a memorial of all the ones that characters that died in Endgame. That's just how massive of a movie that was. So that was their curtain call moment. So that's interesting, because we don't see that anymore. So that's very fascinating. Speaking of names and faces, let's look at some examples of people that may have been signing some of the contracts. And the first one that I would like to mention is one that has recently passed, Matthew Perry,
Oh.
famed for Friends, from the TV show Friends. And this, I was like, man, there had to be something here. As soon as I found the news, the night it happened. Or the night after it happened, I guess. The next 24 hours. I was standing there in the living room, and someone told me, because they was on their phone. I was like, oh, Matthew Perry died, and they were reading me the news article. I was like, this is odd. So, and then afterwards, people, community has done some amazing research, and I found something that I've yet to hear people comment on. And I'm going to start off with that because I think that will help thread this through.
Add some context, yeah.
Yeah. So, and to preface this, like a lot of us may know by now, Matthew Perry posted a lot about Batman on his feed prior to.
Oh yeah, prior to his death.
Yeah, to his death, and he also his memoir from 2022, the last chapter, was titled "The Batman," and
the Batman.
Or Batman or the Batman.
So that's
One
the
of the
last
two.
chapter of his book.
Yep, the last chapter of his book, which is all referencing back to his character Chandler, of course, being a fan of Batman. So he is still heavily identifies with this character of Chandler, but in doing so, he's also picking up the characteristics of Batman in a way. So why was he doing all this Batman stuff, right? Well, one of the things he asked in his couple final posts is, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you know what this symbol means? So he's asking us, do you understand why I'm showing you this Batman symbol? What does this Batman symbol mean? And everybody was talking about this. I was like, man, what does that mean? And so I went on my own kind of side quest, I guess you can say. And I was like, before I get to the Batman stuff, has anyone looked up the book of Matthew and correlated it with his death date? It says 10/28, October 28th. And I go, maybe that will be an extra piece that will help us with the Batman stuff or something. Maybe it's a dead end, who knows? So I looked up Matthew 10/28. And so I'll read us here. Thanks to Joshua for pulling it up for me. I'll read the starting at Matthew 10:26 through 10:28, all the way through
31.
Matthew 10:29, I believe. Let me see here. 31.
It continues.
Yeah, 31. Okay. So it's fear God alone. So do not be afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed. They will not be disclosed, and nothing hidden that will not be made known. 27. What I tell you in the dark speaks in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear proclaimed from the housetops. 10:28. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Instead, fear the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. 29. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall
Man, that's
to the
powerful.
ground apart from the will of your Father. 30. And even the very hairs, we talked about hairs earlier,
Comment.
of your head are all numbered. Are the stars numbered? Are the comments numbered? 31.
Some are.
So do not be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows confessing Christ. So, I read all that. I'm going to reiterate 28 again really quick. 28 was the part that said, do not be afraid of those who can kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Instead, fear the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. So, Matthew 10:28 is about fear. The body and soul being destroyed. Now let's go back to Matthew Perry's question of, do we know what he means when he asks us what the Batman symbol means, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was like, what does the bat symbol generally mean? We have all these sigils like the Spider-Man symbol and the Superman symbol. The Superman symbol is supposed to be like hope, Well, what does the Batman symbol mean? Well, if you go to the Batman website, the first thing I noticed was it has a quote from as Batman Begins, the first Christopher Nolan Batman movie, and it's a quote where Bruce Wayne is saying he's a hero of flesh and bone. And then, if you go to this part of their website that gives details on the origins of the Batman symbol.
So it comes out at bat comes out at twilight too, right?
Yes.
So you can't have a bat signal unless it's nighttime, correct?
Unless it's nighttime, yes. And in the definition, you could say, of the Batman symbol, the origin, it says, unlike other superheroes, the Batman symbol is birthed in fear. Bruce Wayne, as a kid, was fearful of bats. In many versions of the story, including the Christopher Nolan version, he falls into the Batcave as a kid, and then he's traumatized. So he is putting on what he fears, bats, to strike fear in others.
Hmm.
The villains, right? The foes.
Fear of
the
God.
bank robbers and such. And so the bat symbol, yeah, it's alerting him to, oh, there's something up. But also, he in a lot of cases, he has like a phone to the mayor's house, or he has a computer in the bat cave that notifies him, or in the Justice League headquarters, there's always like a computer that alerts them somewhere or something. So, Wells could be the other reason for the Batman, light in the sky.
Well, it's possible
it's also to let the people know that you should be feared because there's someone coming.
Batman.
Batman. So Batman, the Batman symbol, birthed in fear. Matthew 10:28. It's about fear.
Yeah.
So could that be the answer to Matthew Perry's question? So do we know that? Well, what is, he's saying that in those other posts, he's saying like, I'm, he does like a joking like, I'm Matman instead of Batman, and he goes, I sleep peacefully, everyone. I got the city tonight. Well, let's look at what Matthew Perry could have feared, what he was trying to possibly get out, right?
Okay.
And we have those rumors that he was working on another book that was because he started to speak out against trafficking. And
man, that's a big problem these days.
Yeah.
And you think Matthew was getting close to that? Is that what was really going on?
Yeah, he was getting close. He was getting close to that, and then something that you have brought up, Joshua, that kind of helps reinforce this is his connection with, and the cast of Friends connection with Anthony Bourdain. So did you want to share your little piece of that?
Well, Bourdain had a connection with Friends, and that was that after he posted on Twitter at one time that the cast would all get together, in between scenes, I guess, and they would all get together in a circle in a huddle and shout "Hail Satan," I think, or something like that. And so this kind of disturbed him, and he kind of posted about it. And it wasn't long after that he was unalived, and I think it was in somewhat of a suspicious circumstance as well. I can't remember exactly how it was, but it seems like they always try to do it in such a way that they can make it seem like an accident or suicide or something like that. Very rarely do they just off them, outright. But that seems to be the way they kind of handle things. And so I think that maybe Matthew was kind of, again, maybe he wasn't really spiritual, but over time developed a spiritual understanding and then realized, oh man, I'm in deep, or whatever. And then he speaks out, and then what do you know? They're gone. It kind of reminds me of Anne Heche, who was going to release that movie, The Girl in Room 13, which was about human trafficking. And before she could release that, of course, she was killed. So I think that is probably something that happened to Anthony Bourdain. He's also was dating Asia Argento, who's I think a big name in Italy with some, I can't remember if it's purses or something. I think it's wine actually. Um, but Asia Argento, I think that might actually be her real name, but it got me thinking because she is tied also to child trafficking, um, and also different types of groups like satanic groups or Luciferian groups, Thelema, all that Aleister Crowley stuff, and his works tell the reader children are the best source of life energy, more specifically a male child. So I don't think that it's always that. I mean, I really think they're just so sick in the head, like they crave power so much, some of them, that they're willing to do anything they can to get it or to stay young. Um, the adrenochrome and this, that, and the other is kind of another topic, but I think that's all interrelated. And I don't know, maybe Matthew didn't really take all this stuff seriously, and then maybe it was just in his face because Friends has been over for a little while too, so
Yeah.
retirement sets in. Maybe who knows?
I mean, and
He has
he
time
he
to
was,
think.
and apparently he was sober for
Yeah, allegedly he had a drug problem, and that is why he
yeah.
drowned in the bathtub, right? Which doesn't he appear in a fountain in the credits?
Yeah, so yeah, his friends and family have said that he was sober in recent years. He did have a drug problem during his time on Friends. That's why, like, one season he would be really skinny, and in the next season he would gain some weight, right? Because
Right.
he'd go back from being clean to going back up using it as a crutch. So maybe he just wasn't in the right mind state. Maybe he was on some of that placenta casserole. Maybe, who
All
knows?
right. Well, and
Maybe.
there's that chick from the Orange Is the New Black. I can't remember her name. She was recently on social media a lot here, having appeared on some comedians' podcast. And she was talking about the golden, what is it, the golden elixir or golden juice or something like that. And
Yeah.
That's something that's offered to them when they want to sign that contract, sign their name in blood, they get the juice. And I think that that's probably adrenochrome or something. We don't
Yeah.
know. We'll never know.
And also to talk about Friends, you have Jennifer Aniston, who was the biggest probably breakout star of the Friends cast,
Right.
and she is really close to Ellen. She's hosted Ellen's show when Ellen couldn't host for one reason or the other, and she's talked about pizza.
Oh,
She has had pizza parties with George Clooney. Adam Sandler has talked about it. And then, and we all know, the idea of what could pizza mean. There's also a scene in Friends where they keep on ordering pizza because Ross has has a crush on the pizza girl, the pizza delivery girl, and he's a little awkward and he can never say the right thing. He's always making a fool of himself, saying the worst thing possible. And so they'll order another pizza so she'll come back, right? So he can have another chance. And on one of her returns, and she's got short pixie haircut that was popular in the late '90s and early
oh yeah,
2000s.
yeah.
And um, he makes a comment like, oh, I don't think that haircut makes you look like a boy, because apparently something was said previously of her possibly looking like an adolescent boy because of her short hair. And he goes to kind of correct it and try to win her over. He stumbles with his words in a hilarious, I'm using air quotes, way, and he says something along the lines of, "Oh, well, you know, I like young boys." And it's like really creepy, but it's played with that laugh track and everything. But of course, she's a pizza delivery person, and we're talking about Jennifer Aniston and all this. And Jennifer Aniston, she was, I guess you can say, in a way, she was humiliated, I guess, depending on how you look at it, on the Friends set, because she famously never wore a bra.
Oh, okay.
And there's even that Married with Children episode, Al Bundy, where he's watching Friends on his television with binoculars, and they're asking him, "When can you become a fan of the show Friends?" And he makes a comment about, oh, because of Jennifer Aniston, and they go, "What?" And he explains, "Oh, you can, she's obviously not wearing a bra, and you can really tell if you watch it with binoculars." And all the guys are like, "Oh, let me see the binoculars," like that. And there was a thing of people making jokes about Jennifer Aniston never wearing a bra on the set of Friends, and that you could see it during certain scenes, especially, and that possibly they could, maybe the clothing department, when designing Rachel's outfits, possibly knew what they was doing.
Quite possibly.
So it can almost become a meme, right? And it's that meme magic, you could say, which is a better word than humiliation. But it's the same thing where you have to have some controversy, some meme, some joke to really launch your stardom, right? So maybe that was part of it. So we have all these speculations, but going
You think
back to
he
the
was
whole,
sacrificed for somebody else's? And that's the question I have, I guess, is was he sacrificed to limit liability? Like, did he get too close to the truth? Or was he simply like the way to settle the debt? Like, did his friends sacrifice him? I
yeah,
don't know. It's food for thought.
that's a good point. He is also one of the celebrities to die in a bathtub or a hot tub, some type of tub in water.
Mm-hmm.
And that's happened a lot. I always think we're birthed in water, right?
Right.
And so
It's like a baptism ritual. They're trying to mimic
yeah, maybe it's some
things.
kind of baptismal ritual in a way. And our shout out to Cheney for pointing out Doja. Okay, so actually, before we go to the whole Doja Cat of it all, something I would like to mention first is one of my known French trivia that I picked up from over the years is the fountain in the intro to Friends a
Oh
year
yeah, yeah.
prior. It was used and made for the movie Hocus Pocus.
And what do those witches do? They collect children, right?
Yeah, they and they needed a virgin to light the black candle and all that, and
Right.
it's all this youthful you know thing, harvesting stuff, and also as people have pointed out is if you pause the intro of Friends when Matthew Perry's name pops up, it's him in the fountain spitting out water. I also noticed that he also did his last movie was 17 Again with Zac Efron, who he had also recently said that if there was a movie based on Matthew Perry's life, he would want Zac Efron to play him. And which they met, of course, on the set of 17 Again, which is like a reverse Big, where someone at the end of their life, or towards the end of their life, gets a second chance to be 17 again. So that's when Matthew Perry's character goes back and turns into his younger self, which is played by Zac Efron. If you see the opening scene of that movie, which they played that opening scene as a preview for his interview on the Ellen Show, he had the whole crowd clapping for the scene, and it's his scene when he turns in, he goes back in time, goes from Matthew Perry to Zac Efron. What happens is he's driving at night, and it's a storm, and he's on a bridge, and he looks over, he gets out of his car, and he's just having a really horrible time with his family life and everything, and he looks over the bridge, and there was like a vortex, and it had this weird distorted version of his younger self in it, right? So Zac Efron. And then he's like, what? And then he falls into the water, into the vortex. And that's when he wakes up soaked as his younger self.
Oh, rebirthed, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like water is also a very interesting thing. You also had one of the like casting managers or whatever, some people that work behind the scenes for these celebrities who was connected to him had a shirt of someone sitting in a bathtub, and the shirt also had a French font. So it gets really weird. One of the things that, again, shout out to Cheney, she pointed out the connection with Doja Cat. And we all know how satanic Doja Cat is at this point. And
a Hellcat.
Yeah. Apparently I don't know if is a new song or something, and it's called Demons. And on the art for it, it's her sitting on a couch that resembles the couch from Friends, and in that iconic location from the intro, in a demon outfit, a black demon outfit, and then the font that reads Demons is the Friends font, but one of the dots in between the letters is missing.
So is she trying to say that Friends are demons? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to give her the benefit of doubt. And it's like, what is she even trying to do? Because it just seems so off-putting. It's like, is this some sick joke?
Yeah, even if it's just she likes dark things and she's trying to write that thing after it happened, it's still really weird.
Too soon.
Yeah, too soon. And so there has to be some mystical, magical thing happening, right? And then you have something that Cheney pointed out is this black demon outfit she's wearing as she's laying on the couch resembles Catwoman of the the Batman mythos, there's Catwoman, who is a lot like a sexy, like a succubus, just trying to. It's kind of like morally gray, right? It's
Well,
not necessarily evil.
that's like Mystique from X-Men too. She was an assassin, and
yeah, she's like, you don't know if she's good or evil, and she's. What does she do? She tests. She's putting Batman to the test, or Mystique. She's putting them to a lot of times to the test of will you superhero, will your moral compass waver if I dangle a sexual offer or help for information on this villain, or whatever it may be, but it's always in a very seductive way.
Yeah, there's always a price.
Yeah, and it's like, what will that hero do, right? And it's always that test, and we also see that in Spider-Man with Black Cat. She does the same thing. She tests him, and she's the same sort of character. So I thought that was very fascinating to add to it all.
The Doja Cat connection is certainly a strange one.
Yeah.
So you make me think of some of these other celebrities that we hear about that are kind of connected to the same topics. And, over the summer, people were dying at that Travis Scott concert, and he was talking about see you on the other side, and, had weird frequencies coming out of the speakers and stuff like that.
And
a lot of
Beyonce with like the womb thing, where like it looked like he was going back into the womb.
Oh, okay.
Like the whole crowd was like being unbirthed.
Ooh. Bob Dylan famously talked about selling his soul to the chief of the spirit world, the one we cannot see. I always thought that was a really compelling interview, because right there he's talking about it in quite plain. I mean, even though he's hard to understand, he's using plain English there to explain his dealings, and reminds me of how these, back in the day, it was kind of a cliche to say, oh, I took my guitar and met the devil at the crossroads, and they sell their soul to become famous and become a musician or whatever. I just think that's kind of interesting.
It's artistic. It's creative expression, right? Isn't that what they say with that was what's his name, Little Nas X's reasoning for being so demonic with his,
he's also the one that released the shoe that had Luke 10:18 on it, which talks about Satan falling from heaven as a bolt of lightning. And then there was blood mixed in with red ink in the heel. The sole of every shoe contained red ink and blood. So, and of course, he kept showing his shoes off by putting like one shoe in front of an eye, so he's only showing one eye, and stuff like that. And of course, I unfortunately did catch a frame or two of his music video when it was being covered on social media, but he's being very lewd with the devil and so on and so forth. And so I just think that we're seeing the devil here, the one eye symbolism once again, bloody soul, shoes.
I think he's the one that also did that song with Billy Ray Cyrus. And I saw this thing the other day that was like, has anyone seen Billy Ray Cyrus lately? And they showed a picture of him, and they're like, this isn't Rob Zombie, this is Billy Ray Cyrus. And he looks just like Rob Zombie now. Like he has like he's dressing a bit like country gothic.
Maybe
and he's got
Rob
the long
Zombie
hair.
was Billy Ray Cyrus.
And it's like that's not what Billy Ray Cyrus used to look like. You know, he used to look like achy breaky heart sort of,
Right.
you know, stuff. Yeah, something that could be a bit more, I guess, lighter in a sense of not Wayne heavy, not like good, but not Wayne so heavy and this more darker stuff. But still, an example could be Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And first
Rent
off,
free in your head.
we the Brants has mentioned 13 a couple of times.
Yeah, that's
So
her
far.
number, right?
Yep, that's Taylor Swift's number.
So she was born on a
December 13th, 1989.
Yep. So that makes her like 34 then, I think. 33, 34, something like that.
And of course, we all know that Taylor Swift looks like the daughter of the founder of the Church of Satan.
Oh, thanks for bringing that up. Yes, Anton LaVey, right?
Yeah.
I think his daughter's name is Zena or something like that.
Yeah. And she's talked about music.
Yeah.
In interviews where she's like,
about how to make it, how it can be used to influence the energetic field of the body and things like that.
Yeah.
Or sexual arousal, anger, basically to invoke emotion.
Yeah. And so for a second here, let's set the mystical side of all this aside and just look at what's the benefit of a contract relationship between Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, because 100% there is a agreed contract for this. We see this all the time in Hollywood, whether it's Britney Spears and JT dating back in the day because NSYNC and Britney was, you know, the hottest things, and they knew JT was going to be the solo act, the bust out star of the group, and so what better way to package him differently and away from NSYNC than with Britney Spears, the princess of pop at the time, right? So it's just like, you know, going back to the whole royalty, like doing treaties and agreements between, you know, having a marriage treaty, a marriage contract, right? Very similar thing. If you want to market something, a marriage agreement, a relationship agreement does wonders. Regardless, it's just a very fascinating thing to use as marketing. Look at things like The Bachelor. Look at shows like Survivor or Big Brother or any of these reality TV game shows. They always have a showmance. And regardless if it lasts afterwards, you know, this idea that people meet each other live on TV and then fall in love, and people buy into it, fall in love with this relationship and want to follow it and stuff.
Right. And they become invested emotionally in it. Yeah.
So it's
the story aspect.
Yeah,
which is what Taylor's known for, telling stories with her albums, right?
Yeah,
the joke is that her boyfriend's going to become a song at some point.
Yeah, she's a bard. She's a storyteller, and she's a singer-songwriter. What they call them now. Her especially in a world where everyone's just releasing singles, no one's doing albums anymore, right? And I mean, just like movies or TV shows, people crave, people love, whether for nostalgic reason or just because it's what they're looking for. They're wanting this connected, long, meaningful, deep-rooted, thought-out, well-crafted story. This full arc, beginning, middle, end. And she even like I think it's like her album, like, is it called Folklore or like Evermore or something like that? But that album especially tells a story of like three people, and it's like a concept album, right? I guess is what you would call it. But yeah, she writes about her exes, um, and these real life things. Same thing with other singer songwriters like Lana Del Rey. Like that's why people are drawn to them. And something that I've thought about with Taylor Swift is she's one of the only examples of a modern day idol.
Oh yeah.
I mean, and I'll get into
People do seem
details
to
here in a
worship her.
second, but before I get into details, I just saw the other day that there is going to be a Taylor Swift fan cruise ship. So a Swiftie cruise line where Swifties can go on a cruise and meet up.
Oh
And I was like,
no.
what is that? Like a Christian cruise where you can meet Christians
Oh yeah.
and like date and stuff? Like, and Taylor Swift, she, of course, her fans, they're always looking for um like clues. Like, is it that like if you circle every first letter of like her song tracks on her album or something, they'll come up with a message or something, and she has Swifties, um, her followers Swifties. She has them thinking of like color magic, which we could
Yeah.
possibly do a whole episode, in the future soon about color magic and color grading into movies and stuff and all that. But she has them thinking about these color magic things and wanting to do, you know, conspiracy boards and figure out pieces and clues on what she's dropping next and all these things, and like praising her. And she is their idol. They call her mother or goddess or whatnot. She has them. She has that Karma music video where she, or is it Willow? One of those where she has the Willow witches, and they're all dancing around with the orbs and around the fire, and she's wearing a devil's mask and all this. Um,
It's hard to
and
believe where it'll be 5 years from now, huh?
yeah, it's. I mean, we have Swifties that are skipping work and like covering their faces with blankets. There's like a and like doing interviews so they don't get in trouble. We have Swifties like going in the sewers to try to sneak into the concert when it's full. It's all these stuff. I mean, it's really become. I mean, people like you can get a degree from like Harvard and Yale and all these like universities of like a degree in Taylor Swift. That is a real thing. So they have all these things. It's become a religion. People
Hmm.
say it in a mean way, like, "Oh yeah, you know, she is yada yada." then you really look at it, and it has become. You have men, grown men, listening, becoming Swifties. You have her popularizing things that are already popular, like her friendship bracelets, which have also been famously connected to the candies of the 90s rave community, like the Candy Kids and stuff.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now that's popular because of Taylor Swift and stuff. So you have like all these things. You have when the Eras tour started, she was 33, and she had the Masonic ritual of like her climbing the ladder, and then she would jump down, and the stage would look like it's water, and she would go under the stage and come out on the other side of the stage in
Oh,
a
yeah,
dress, and all this crazy stuff. You have people not remembering her concerts, and now it's a new buzzword in like psychology circles of like, oh, they're just so ecstatically excited they forget.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've been excited, but I don't forget it. I remember it. The only time that may happen is when in ceremonies in churches and chapels, when you have people speaking in tongues or something, automatic writing and things, channeling, things like that. So you have all this stuff. So let's go back to the more of the grounded stuff with her and Travis, or is it? Yeah, Travis Kelce. Um, she was the original first pick for the Super Bowl halftime show that is coming in February.
Yep.
She allegedly declined it because her tours, her concerts are so big that she sells out more seats than what their Super Bowl stadium could hold. And then they get Usher to do it instead, and they have this whole thing of like Kim Kardashian calling Usher, and it's a whole weird, like, oh, you're picked, so he gets the seconds. But yeah, so she rejects it. Shortly after she rejects the NFL's offer, who's the NFL, another, is connected to going back to like Rome and Greece, and it's very ritualistic event, especially the Super Bowl. The NFL has hit an all-time like sales low, interest low, fan low. Not as popular as what it once was, and now Taylor Swift, is rejecting them because they're not choosing Taylor Swift for just her ticket sales. They're running the new generation, the younger generation,
Oh, okay.
to get interested in the NFL again, so the NFL could have extended longevity,
So
right?
it's a big marketing scheme.
It's a big marketing scheme, yeah, and just clever marketing.
Now, didn't this
And
start because of her association with Jets, and the leftists were going after her, so she decided to go to the Chief Jets game, and then after
that
that,
that
the search
that's the
results
other
got
thing.
flooded.
So as kind-hearted as they make her out to be, America's little sweetheart, right? They was going after her because she's supposed to be a certain way, have certain ideals, and everything. And that was kind of contradictory in a way to some people because she was flying her jet so much that she was doing a lot of eco harm, I guess you could say. And so used to, if you search Taylor Swift jets, it used to be that coming up. But now because Travis Kelce has a brother who plays for the Jets, and she went to the Jets game with the Kelce family. So then that became the new thing that popped up if you search Taylor Swift Jets. So yeah, you have all this stuff, which is interesting. Again, that's one of the things that the Swifties have talked about, right? But it's like they don't make the connection that like if that's happening to Taylor Swift on a small scale, imagine the bigger scale of like the government banning stuff, the dead internet theory, right?
Right? Yeah, I think
So,
that's well. They want to kill the internet. Even one of the presidential candidates, Nikki Haley, was talking about how she wanted to make it mandatory that everybody has to have like an ID basically to even log on to social media platforms. So I know that they eventually want to do that. They want to cripple the internet and turn it into something else that it's not already.
yeah. So yeah, this can go in so many different ways. So it's it's also since she rejected the Super Bowl halftime show offer, like a month or two later, her and Travis Kelce become a thing.
The
Eddie,
showmance.
yeah, a showmance, exactly. And look at what especially her early songs and her newer songs, even she has a couple of one or two movie roles. I know she is definitely in the movie Valentine's Day where she plays a cheerleader. And it's like an anthology of like different people falling in love. And she's supposed to be a cheerleader that's, wanting to win another like a football player over or something, which is also what multiple music videos. It's her as like a cheerleader, like trying to win over a guy that's like a football player or something. So she has this branding of America's sweetheart. So
She's
it's like she's
speaking to a certain audience.
yeah, and it's the whole like girl next door thing, and she's becoming the song she's been barding for all these years, right? And even you have the pictures of her and like the booth at the Chiefs game with um Kelsey's Travis Kelce's mom, and they're talking, and it's all like, oh, isn't this sweet? And then you have like him on his break in between games going to go visit her during her concert. And apparently he was also a fan of hers. He was a Swiftie
Oh,
before dating
come
her.
on.
So it's like
So
the
now he's a
fan's
groupie.
dream come true. Like his dream came true, right? And then which you see this in movies all the time, like rom-coms. Like where is it? I I want a date with Tad something or other. Which in turn is inspired by like a Shakespearean play, if I remember correctly. Because in the early 2000s, there was a lot of like rom-coms that was just twist on Shakespearean plays, if I'm correct, about that one. And so it's like it's been a movie trope for a lot, and a lot of people, you know, who are Swifties. Yeah, there are older Swifties, and yeah, there are younger Swifties. The bulk of it right now are probably people that are between the ages of 30s and your 20s and your 30s, right? Who probably grew up watching a lot of these rom-coms where these things happened. And so the reason why I said earlier at the beginning of this that Taylor Swift is one of the only modern 21st century idols is because you know they're not building celebrities idols anymore. Yeah, you have Korea and like the their factory of creating like K-pop stars and stuff, and like Japan does it too. But like really in the Western world, like we don't have. Where's our Madonnas? Where's our Elvises? Right? Just like actors, all your big actors, or your like starlet actors, was really made in like the 80s and 90s now. There really hasn't been like
Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, exactly. There hasn't been
Like
really a
that.
new one of that.
Drew Barrymore.
Yeah. And so going back to Taylor Swift, so why can't in the Western world they craft a superstar idol? Well, they can't do like a Britney Spears or Madonna thing because the whole thing with them was you only saw them when they were on the red carpet. It was all handcrafted what we saw, right? In the
Curated.
tabloids and on the red carpets and stuff. Just like that's
like a zoo animal.
Yeah, like Korea and Japan, their machines, their factories, I guess you can say, of creating these stars, or they go through like boot camp essentially to get them to become idols, so they still have that mystique, idolism in them. Well, we don't have that anymore in the West because of social media, because of the internet. You can just follow the person, and it feels more close and personal all the time. So what Taylor is doing is she's kind of using that, right? She's inviting Swifties over to her house or one of her houses to do cookies and doing an album listening party and all this, and she's cultivating this narrative of the girl next door and all, and so it's really the a new way of creating a idol, where the old ways of creating an idol isn't manageable in the Western world anymore. I think it's interesting to think about. Then, and then she has this contract with Travis Kelce, right? This relationship contract. And it was like, is he going to be the one? Will they get married? And then there was a meme of if they have a kid, their son is going to be like Troy Bolton from High School Musical, like having to decide music or a sports star.
Oh yeah.
There's that meme now, which gets us back to Zac Efron, because Zac Efron played Troy Bolton in High School Musical. So that leaves it.
Which was what, basketball, and he was in on a basketball team or something.
Yeah, I believe so. Which High School Musical was just a retelling of Grease. It was supposed to be a modern day take on Grease.
It was pretty popular.
Oh yeah, I was like that prime age. I remember going to Park Day in elementary school. I think it was like my last year of elementary school before I went to middle school when High School Musical, the first movie, came out, and that soundtrack was played all throughout the park. Everyone was playing that on their radios they brought. Whereas we're all in this together, which now, again, what was every celebrity talking about in 2020? We're all in the same boat. We're all in this together. So that's interesting. But yeah, this whole, so whether it's magical or whether you're looking at it from a marketing perspective,
there's definitely something going on there.
Relationship contracts are a thing. And yes, since Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, has been together, the the viewership, the money of the NFL has gone up. The net worth, the stocks. I mean, it's all up on the up when it was going down and down over the years. So it's again, it's just like in a kingdom. Like, oh, maybe if your prince marries my princess, and our kingdoms could have a trade route of merchandise and protect each other from outside forces or whatnot, right? Our citizens could become one or something, like all that stuff. Yeah, that's, to me, that's very very interesting one to think about, because how big it is right now, right? Do you have anything to add to that, Joshua?
I'm still researching the Taylor Swift thing. I thought maybe she had a fake name, but apparently that is her name.
Yeah.
So I was surprised about that. And as much as I wanted to prove that she was, some type of demon worshiper, I was having a difficult time finding anything that was hard evidence.
Yeah. Well,
So yeah,
she has talked about in interviews. She does do magic, and she loves manifestation magic. She was
that
on
might be
some late
what
night talk show.
the Willow
Yeah,
thing might be about that, right?
yeah. And her fans do praise dark forces when she does that song, in alleged, recordings from the concerts and stuff. So there are little things, that are a bit off, and they cultivate, something, when someone is so sweet, but your gut tells you, maybe there's something off. Why are they so sugary?
Maybe they're
And
high fructose corn syrup.
yeah, and then you have, I looked at her Wikipedia page once, and I think I was on the phone with you, Joshua, when I was doing this. And her backstory on her Wikipedia page is like her parents was like stockbrokers or something in the big city, and then, they moved out of the city and bought a Christmas tree farm. And then she became, after she was born and got a bit older, she got a job as like a coffee shop waitress before she became famous.
Yeah, I
So
know
it's
she had
like,
like a very wholesome upbringing. It sounds like.
yeah. Well, if you read that, it's just like that's just a stock script to any Hallmark movie.
Right.
Stockbrokers move out of the city, buy a Christmas tree farm, have a daughter who wants to be a musician. Like,
It does sound like a script of a movie. You're right.
yeah, it's so. It's very interesting.
Well, and
You
if
know,
that's the case, she's definitely fulfilling her purpose by distracting everybody. Because while World War III is about to begin, we're talking about Taylor Swift. You know what I mean? Like it's just she's every time I'm in like a social gathering, her name comes up, and I just think it's kind of funny.
yeah, and then her or Travis Kelce, and you had, I forget what I was going to say now. I had one other thing I was going to say about her. Oh well.
Well, the name Taylor refers to a suit of seamless flesh. So think of it as our skeleton is just a skeleton until flesh is put on it. And that is the definition of Taylor, the seamless body of flesh that's put on our bones. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
kind
and
of what her name refers to.
I remember what I was going to say now. She also is allegedly possibly going to play Dazzler in Deadpool 3. She is friends
Yeah.
with Ryan Reynolds and his wife. I forget her name. She's an actress too. And there's an X-Men character called Dazzler who's like a siren sort of pop star, which makes me think of the comic book The Wicked and Divine, where there's a pantheon of gods who come down and try to influence indirectly by becoming musicians and stuff. Which,
Well, that's basically what we're dealing with here.
yeah, which is a very fascinating graphic novel. I would love to possibly do maybe an episode on it. I think that would be a fun one as well. Yeah. Um, even if Taylor Swift, you know, is just doing her thing, if she's just going by the script, maybe her script could have some, ill intentions behind it. Who knows? Maybe she's more of an antagonist than we think.
Yeah.
There's a trend of, like I even get like suggestions on like Spotify. It's like, oh, we have a new anti-hero playlist. There's this whole thing, like it's even in our language now of like, oh, you're in your anti-hero era, which is funny that her whole thing is the Eras tour. Of course, like you said earlier, she got back her she's getting back her rights to her songs by re-recording them, the tailored version of it all, which her parents own the record label, were part shares of the record label that she's trying to get them away from.
Mm-hmm.
It's so wild. Um,
Well, she gets married to this Kelsey guy. That's going to ruin her brand. So I don't see her doing that. Taylor Kelsey doesn't have the ring.
well, a lot of celebrities don't change their last names for that reason
Well,
when they
they
get
need a
married.
good brand, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, that was the next thing I wanted to talk about. Is a little bit at least is branding, sigil. That was all acknowledged to be very powerful stuff with very evil figures throughout history. Stalin, Hitler, they all had propaganda marketing people who was also their occult, or allegedly their occult, you know, sect
But
group of
also
people.
there's cinematographers as well in that
Yeah.
group. They made
And
a lot of movies.
yeah, they made a lot of we have like the whole like like Soviet propaganda films and stuff. Even to where there are some that are like, that seem to be children's fairy tales. Right? Walt Disney, I'm going to be doing a big Walt Disney episode, but briefly I'll mention, he also had his hand in propaganda and the occult. So it's all, marketing does have a mystical side to it as well, and it has been acknowledged throughout very interesting figures throughout history.
It's all meme.
It's all meme magic, exactly. Chaos magic, meme magic. So, with that being said, is there anything else that you wanted to say, Branch? Anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I think we covered all the topics that we had listed. I would just say, the devil's in the details. So the next time you find yourself standing there with a pen in your right hand, you might want to read the contract.
Yeah, read the terms and conditions.
Read the fine print.
Look at Zoom.
Right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on. This was a pleasure.
Yes. Thank you, Joshua, for coming on. And yeah, I think the first Guys a Playwright, God of Authority, is like my second most viewed or liked video right now.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, it is an interesting topic.
Yeah, I love talking about it with you. So I'm sure over time we will do a third one. This contract one was fun, so thank you. Is there anything else you want to end with or promote or anything before we go?
Well, as you can see on the screen there, you can find me on YouTube as the Solomon Report. Again, I used to do videos with somebody that has since retired, but you can still find some of the content there. If you want to find me on Instagram, you can find me at Appalachian Aesthetic with an underscore there between the two words. And of course on Telegram as The Branch. So feel free to reach out and let me know what you think about the content.
Yes. And remember, everyone, to co-create, co-author your story. Live your story. Weave your own tale with God. And remember, the stars are not just on the screen, they're also in the sky. That was once acknowledged by the Greek actors when they put on their mask. So it's all channeling, it's all being played out. The world is stage. God is the greatest author. And see you next time here on channel KOK, King of Cups.
See you next time.